The Legionaires Journal by G.T. Reid. Entry 6. Reading. I grow tiresome of the cramped conditions aboard this vessel. It is straining more mentally than physically. The boredom is vexing me greatly. The weather is worsening as we venture further north. The wind's bitter, and the downpour is almost perpetual. These long and arduous days have become weeks of mind-numbing confinement within the wooden frame of this vessel. I long to be free from the surrounding waters, no matter what lands the tide carries us to, regardless of its occupants or the terrain. I will kiss the ground upon arrival. The only traces of comfort I have on my person are, of course, my journal and 2 books which I have brought with me on this journey. The first being that of the writings of Plato Herodotus, wherein he describes the mythological island of the Titans, Dogalantis, which, in a way, mirrors very much the fabled isles we are destined. And the second being that of the handwritten accounts of El Tonto Colombo's exploratory expeditions of the wild easterly lands of Kia. These books serve me well as a means of not only escapism, but also in the learning of what may await us in the lands that are hitherto unknown. Entry 7. The Misty Isles. This morning it was as though our fleet became enveloped in some strange sorcery, as if the air and water were merged, or the heavens themselves had fallen, causing the clouds to move in our midst, making it near impossible to navigate. All we could do was to allow the current of the tide to carry us through the veil of mist, and pray to Neposeidon that he would guide us safely. As we caught sight of land, immense boulders crashed against our ships, splintering off large shards of wood which rained down upon us. These projectiles came not from war machines, but from an even greater horror. Atop the white cliffs, in the distance beyond a thick grey shroud of fog, stood the shadowy silhouettes of towering giants, whirling slabs of rock in their slings. They wore grotesque features, with matted hair the colour of flames. They roared with glee upon seeing the destruction and carnage they unleashed upon us. I have witnessed many horrific sights battling in countless campaigns throughout the world, none compared to the terror of which my still shaking hands are struggling to scribe on these sheets. Our ships bobbed around in the choppy waters like helpless targets, under a barrage of fire unlike any known in the realms of men. The gigantic boulders flew through the air, akin to an angered god, hurling a comet from the heavens, decimating our fleet as we ran aground. The bows of our vessel beached. We made haste toward the shoreline, still under fire from the hulking giants upon the cliffs above. Catching sight of the ship to my left, I was sickened upon seeing that it was awash with viscera of my companions, their bodies crushed to pulp under the force of a hurtling slab. Casting my gaze away from this gruesome vision, I looked to my right and watched as my brothers in arms disembarked upon the sand. The first to do so disappeared instantaneously as the sodden ground swallowed him whole, engulfing his body as if it were a deep pool of water. The general barked orders as our forces deployed in the testudo formation, ready to advance on the enemy, who gathered in an unorganized fashion, yelling slurs and battle cries, wielding their primitive weapons in a crazed frenzy, which would have seen men of lesser nations turn and flee for their lives. However, this would not be the case for the unwavering legions of Invicta. The Albanese natives bear a slight resemblance to the barbarians of Vor, garbed in clothing made of animal furs and hides, with a cloth tunic-like dress adorned with intricate pattern made up of interwoven squares of black and blue. They have a distinctive appearance, with fiery locks of long hair. Their bodies are clean shaven, painted with pale blue woad, and their dress is strange, both men and women resembling the demonic maidens of Hades himself. They are as ferocious as the tales told of them, possibly more so. Though an undisciplined rabble, they make up for it with their bravery, along with an unwavering fervour for the spilling of our blood. Fearlessly, they thrust themselves at our shield walls, swinging their crude implements of war, seeking to bludgeon and hack at us. They throw javelins and pelt us with stones from their slings. These projectiles, for the most part, are but a mere nuisance. However, those hurled by their towering allies are terrifyingly efficient, cutting swaths through our usually impenetrable shield formations. This day shall be etched forever in my mind. I have witnessed the brute force of Titans, the bodies of my compatriots, men I knew well, reduced to unrecognizable visceral pulp, or nearly cleft in twain under the barrage of these giants. Still, against these odds, we endured, and after a day of grueling battle, staining the sand red with blood, we have managed to establish a foothold on the coast. Praise the gods, for they have smiled upon us today. Of all my companions, I have formed bonds with, spoken to, or at least known by their name, still stand. All be many of them, suffering from ailments sustained in combat. Alas, one remains unaccounted for. Neither is he amongst the bodies laying on the battlefield, nor those washed ashore, accompanying the sundered remnants of our once mighty fleet, which are now reduced into driftwood. Either young Junius is amongst those of our number too bloodied and mutilated to retain any of their distinguishable features, or his body now lays beneath the murky depths of the sea, as wrathful as a god as Neposeidon is capable of being. I pray that what remains of my youthful friend finds a peaceful resting place. Entry 8. Terra Firma. The place we have landed in is an untamed terrain with dense forests and treacherous swamplands. These isles appear barren, with little to offer with regards to sustenance. The weather here is abnormally damp and bitterly cold. We are yet to witness the rays of the sun penetrate through the grey clouds above, leaving one to wonder how anything at all grows here. The flora of these isles is comprised of hardy plant life, such as heather, thistles, bracken, and the like. There are all manner of tree species growing from these soils, aside from beech and pine. As for the fauna, they are ubiquitous in number. I have thus far seen a large variety of beasts grazing upon the moorlands, as well as predators such as wolves preying on the wild boar, deer, and semi-tame cattle, amongst other indigenous herbivores. There has been no sight of settlements of any kind, be them cities, towns, or villages. My speculation precedes the notion that possibly the native populace, as primitive as they are, could indeed be troglodytes. There is no infrastructure, agriculture, or roads as far as I am aware, and it is unknown as to whether or not there is a hierarchy amongst these people. As strange as it sounds, both men and women appear to be of equal social standing. We have encountered female warriors, and even those appearing to be leaders of sorts, who are as fearsome as their male counterparts, reminiscent of the Amazons of myth. Much effort has been expended in establishing some form of civilization. The dense woodlands and rocky beaches have yielded a bounty of building materials. Defences have been erected, with modest shelters built behind them, and the construction of a road has already commenced. It is good to see that progress is being made, and those who have perished thus far have not done so in vain. The vessels on which we have sailed to these shores are no longer seaworthy, most of which were reduced to splinters under the hail of boulders that met us upon our arrival. This is but a mere inconvenience for an industrious people such as we. The forests of these lands produce a good quality of wood which grows in abundance. What is concerning, however, is the many sightings of giants stalking us amidst the fog, keeping a watchful eye on our position from atop the cliffs. These towering brutes appear poised, as if they await for the perfect opportunity to strike. General Viribus has ordered the construction of ships to send word of our landing home to Invicta, so as to establish a supply line. If we are to bolster our forces with reinforcements, there is nothing these accursed lands can throw at us to hinder our campaign of conquest. Entry 9. Barbarians at the gates. They came in the night, the sound of boulders crashing through our shelters as towering behemoths loosed their slings, roused our already exhausted bodies from their slumber. The laughter of those giant men bellowed upon witnessing the havoc they had unleashed, boisterously jostling each other as if they were in contest. The Albanese warriors scaled the ramparts and set ablaze to our walls, while others hurled projectiles, almost overwhelming us. The hulking giant strode forth from the shadows, seemingly shrugging off the countless javelins piercing its flesh, and with ease wrenched off the gates with its bare hands, breaching our defences. Only when our forces were able to fully gather our senses and rally were we capable of pushing back the incessant hordes of natives. Our formation stood like a blockade, stemming the tide of lesser skilled fighters. We encircled the gigantic brutes, bringing them crashing down one by one, akin to woodsmen felling immense trees. Upon witnessing our superior military prowess and tactical manoeuvres, they turned tail, fleeing back into the night. A handful of our men perished, and a good number were injured, but it was nothing compared to the countless barbarians who fell this evening. Surely this display of might should dissuade further raids, though due to the savage nature of the Albanese people, it is doubtful that they possess the sense of a civilized mind. I envision this campaign to be equally as arduous and grueling as my time spent eradicating the relentless hordes of bestial men to the north of our borders. This first-hand experience of combating such unorthodox and unpredictable fighters shall serve us well. Entry 10. Watchman. My companions and I have been assigned to serve under the senior guardsman Aetius, tasked with keeping watch. As I look out from my post atop the ramparts, the view is obscured by the dense clouds of fog floating amongst the surrounding woodland, casting strange shadows as they ebb and flow in the moonlight. There are strange noises in the darkness of night. Only the gods know of what manner of beast they come from. Occasionally the sound of distant drumming can be heard, being carried through the twilight air. They want us to know they're out there, and possibly nearer than we would expect. Nonetheless, we stay ready. Granted, they are fierce warriors, and brave, but they are no match against our legion. We have fought far mightier foes than these primitive brutes. This evening, all has been quiet. However, we maintain our vigilance, for the threat of these wild men remains. Nonetheless, our spears are ever ready to repel these belligerent wretches.